Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to episode 6 of Brand Studio Live. I'm Ramit Arora and I have yet another set of brand masters with me today. Hosted jointly by the HT Brand Studio and DMA Asia, Brand Studio Live brings together the country's top CXOs to talk about the hottest topics in marketing. In the process, we not only learn from the best, but we are inspired by them. Before we start today's episode, let me tell you what's special about it. Today we are celebrating the enormous success of the previous 5 episodes of Brand Studio Live, which have sparked many conversations among marketeers. Therefore, we have among us some of those who've spoken in previous episodes, and thank you so much for coming back and being part of this sort of midway through the season celebration. The second thing that's fairly special about this episode is the theme itself. When we laid out the theme and we said we are going to be talking about marketing to the millennial woman, we got such a huge response that we actually had to shift out to the newsroom. So this is our first episode where we've shifted to the studio outside of the newsroom. And it's heartwarming that the attendance today is 25 plus brands and CXOs. So thank you very much everybody for being here. Without further delay, let's get started with episode 6 of Brand Studio Live. India is adding more women to the internet than any country in the world. That's what ComScore's report tells us, and a customized report which is available today from ComScore's marketing suite tells us that women actually access multiple devices more than men do. They're increasingly driving retail and OTT, and for many categories, they're an unrecognized and unrealized demographic dividend. Today's young woman is more confident, more empowered, more independent, certainly more informed, and I would say far, far more confident. What does all this mean for us? Are we ready to deal with this new world order? Are our brands evolving as fast as our world? More importantly, have we broken down legacy bias, and is our thinking sort of moving in the same direction and at the same speed as the world is? Sometimes legacy is going to be part of our challenges, but hopefully in today's discussion we are going to break through that and we're going to get to some real answers on marketing to women in this new millennium, in the age of the internet. My first guest today is Rutu Mody Kamdar, the founder and managing director of Jigsaw Brand Consultants. With a deep understanding of human behavior, Rutu has helped several companies find context in the lives of consumers. Rutu also teaches branding and consumer behavior at universities in India, France, Germany, and Australia. Welcome to HT, Rutu. Rutu today will talk to us about how brands can overcome laid down norms while communicating with the millennial woman. But before that, let me share an interesting study that I read this morning, in fact, conducted by the CAA and a tech firm called Shift 7 in America. Basically, they researched 350 movies produced in Hollywood over the last 10 years. And they found that 110 of those movies actually had women in leading roles, or as titles before the men. And what the research says is that across all budget levels, small budget, blockbusters, big budget movies, the movies that were led by women performed better than the movies that were led by men, which is, quite a myth buster in so many ways. It reflects two realities. One that has been deflected by myths forever, that the hero is not a single archetype. And I know you've just released a white paper on archetypes in women, right? And the other is that 50% of the box office is women, and that's the unrealized demographic dividend. I know your recent work, the white paper that you've produced and we're using today as a basis for a lot of the discussion we are having, emphasizes the many roles and motivations around the millennial woman. And you've often told me that much of this has not been discovered because marketers are lazy, we stereotype, we tend to stay with convention and the roles that we've ascribed to women over the years. So tell us more.
So I think you've established the fact, Ramit, that women are the world's most influential consumers, the most important consumer, right? 50% is a big number, and the fact that 80% of them, actually there's an 80% influencing role that they play. But like you said, they're very rarely kind of understood or represented in media. They're not adequately, put out there for the media to see. And in all the study that we've done with women, I mean, we've been doing studies with women for over many years now, and what we've essentially seen is that women don't feel like they're represented in the right manner. They feel that they're not understood. Their deep-seated motivations or their latent desires are not really decoded in the right manner. And there's a lot of change that is happening, as we speak. Things are changing around us. You see a lot of people, a lot of women, in fact, are breaking out of the conventional grids that we as marketers or we as advertisers have put them into. But unfortunately, advertisers and marketers continue to draw caricatures of women. Yeah. So, for example, why is a woman who is a boss in an office expected to come home and cook a hot, freshly prepared meal for her husband? Yeah. Or for that matter, why is a woman expected to find her harrowed husband's socks every morning? Why is it that we continue to draw these caricatures of women? Why do we represent them in these manners? Why is it that we draw pictures like, a woman can't do any financial transactions without her husband, or the fact that a woman can't change a tire on a car, or a woman, her kind of main existence depends on the fact that her child wins a trophy in a race. Now, these are things that we've used in a way as grids to define women, and unfortunately, as marketers, we haven't taken it upon ourselves to kind of represent them in the right manner. The unfortunate thing here, Ramit, is the fact that as marketers and advertisers, we mirror society. And in a way, we are perpetuating these realities that we think exist. Yeah, we think that this is what the reality is because we've not understood the woman out there. And because of that, we're representing her in the wrong manner. Now, our research, in fact, the archetypes that we've drawn out, we call it the 9 avatars of the Indian woman. What we're really saying here is that there are many mini revolutions. There are newer kinds of cohorts that are forming, newer segments that are forming. The perfect homemaker, whom we've traditionally known as a woman whose existence depended on making sure that her home was the perfect space, she cooked the perfect meal, she had the perfect kids. All of that is now being replaced by women who are increasingly stepping out of the house boundaries and are defining themselves or are finding their identity outside. Imperfection is something that women are embracing in a better way today. It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to throw in the towel. It's okay to not be body perfect. It's okay to have a more positive body image of yourselves. It's okay to not be the unattainable sex symbol that we've always looked up to. Yeah, and these are the things that we're seeing more and more, not in urban cities, but in smaller towns. The beauty of this is that there are so many women out there who are kind of, wanting to get out, speak up, talk about what they believe in. And as advertisers and marketers, we need to sit up and take notice of this. Yeah, even for that matter, the fact that women are choosing to be unattached. Yeah, earlier it kind of, if you're not married or if you don't have a child, you were looked at as an outlaw. But today women are choosing to be childless or choosing to be not married, are choosing to define themselves for who they are. The beauty of this is, in context to your topic today, is the fact that in the age of the internet, this is all possible. Yeah, the woman is today not feeling alone or she's not feeling alienated because there are many more out there who are like her. And earlier, maybe about 20 years back, we didn't have the privilege of forming these communities. Yeah, and the communities today that are forming because of the mobile phone, because of social media, you look at more and more women outside who believe in the same things that you do, and therefore you don't feel alone anymore. You don't feel stifled also to fit in. Yeah, I feel that too, in fact, in a lot of ways, where I see women out there and you kind of want to join that community, or you feel that you can also identify with this. Essentially, I feel as marketers, as advertisers, there's a purpose that we need to believe in, and the fact that we represent a section of the society, we are perpetuating realities, we are setting the way for how women should be looked at. And if we're going to be defining them through narrow lenses, if we're not going to go out there and really understand them for who they are, I think we're creating, I don't think it's fair on the new age millennial woman. The fact that she needs to be represented for who she is. And if we do that, I think we're creating a new order for women today in India.
And a new order for the world.
That's right.
You did talk about financial transactions, and it's a good segue. Before we go to questions, Vishwajit is here. He heads marketing and brand for Bajaj Capital. Financial products is a category, Vishwajit, that for very long was completely male-centric. It just completely assumed that the woman had no role in either investing money or in the family's fortunes or future security. But that's changing, and changing very, very fast. And I can see that financial service brands are scrambling to sort of keep up with that reality. What's your experience been with that, very quickly?
So I think I'll agree to what the ma'am was saying a few minutes back. Though we believe that women are born financial planners. Whenever there is an emergency of cash, they will bring out from some source or other source. But really, are they doing financial transactions? Data is not supporting that. There is a gradual increase, but I would not say drastic increase. The trends are changing. So if you look at financial planners a few years back, it used to be only 4-5%, but now there is a 20% financial planners who are advising people to where to invest. So there's no lack of knowledge, there's no lack of expertise. They are scientists, they are entrepreneurs, but when it comes to transactions, still they are not taking the decisions. So they are the main influencers in the family. They are not fully taking. It's not that they are not at all doing. The gradual increase is there. The woman understands today that if they are not financially independent, that's not the real thing. So if they have to be financially independent, they have to take investment decisions. So they are taking it. But is it on a great rise? I don't think so. There is still a long way to go. That's what I feel.
Rutu, I have a question for you. Do you think that a large part of the reason why you've observed what you have, and it's not completely untrue, is that this was all advertising and marketing over the years conceptualized by men for women? Absolutely. Or do you think it's just the community which has not done justice to?
No, in fact, that's exactly why maybe financial companies have not been able to really understand women in the way they are. I think men have had a headway, a significant headway as compared to women. The fact that men are better represented in companies, they're the ones in the boardrooms, they're the ones taking the decisions. Marketing is something that is fairly male-driven. I don't think women have had that kind of representation in the company for them to have that lens existing. Like I said, it's making a product pink is not the answer to making it gender specific. It's that's not the way to look at marketing to women. It's about really looking at a product from the root and understanding it from the woman's perspective. Now, for example, financial products could be looked at from a totally different lens, but we continue to look at it from the male lens and think that women don't understand it. So I think the balance is something that hasn't come in because of the fact that women don't have representation even in the company.
Very interesting, and I'm sure we are going to talk about this more as we go along. Any other questions? Yeah, Praveen has a question. Yes.
So I think it's a very interesting debate. There are sectors where women have been the forerunners. Look at the BPO sector, look at the IT sector, look at the media sector for that matter. And just a comment, it is important that we start looking at the millennials, especially the women who have come out to the fore, have started working in these sectors, and they are the ones who would specifically, when it comes to categories like financial products or insurance for that matter, they are the ones who would start thinking about it and have started thinking about it. I think it is the time that brand wake up to that audience and start bringing those icons in their communication.
Absolutely.
Good point. Yes, Krishnan.
Thanks for that. I think that was lovely. Very, very clear and very eye-opening. I had a question for you. So I got a lot of the knot from what you said. Do you have some examples of brands which have communicated well with women and with millennial women and, people who have done it well? Can you share some insights there?
So there are some, award-winning campaigns, but they are very far and few in between is what I feel. But I think one of the noteworthy ones there is the Share the Load campaign. I think that was the one which, the Ariel Share the Load campaign, I think was one of the few campaigns that clearly spoke to the woman and, ensured that there was a balanced role responsibility that the men also took on. Swiggy is doing that right now with the way in which they're representing the woman and the fact that, it's okay for her not to cook that hot prepared meal and give her kid the phone instead to call for a meal. I think it's, these are the traits that I see a lot of brands now taking in. But like I said, it's few and far in between, it's essentially, you still have the campaigns which are still talking to that woman, but she still has to come back home and do the stuff that she's supposed to. Those kind of dichotomies still exist. But yeah, some of the noteworthy ones that I just mentioned definitely are there. And it's slowly and steadily changing.
Rutu, thank you so much for a wonderful session. The report that you've spoken about is now available, and anybody who wants it can possibly get in touch with you or us, and we'll put out the details in the episode. Thank you so much. My next guest is Priyanka Gill, founder and CEO of POPxo, which is India's largest digital community for women. An ambitious entrepreneur, she built the company into a highly tech-driven, data-driven media tech platform. But let that not confuse you. It is also a massively consumer-centered, consumer-driven brand. The brand now drives over 200 million engagements every month, and all from women. 300, as growing as we speak. In June 2017, Priyanka launched POPxo, India's largest influencer marketing program. She's received several awards, including the FICCI Flow Power to Empower Award in 2018 and the Young Business Women Award at the CNBC Young Turks Conclave. Now you're at HT. Congratulations. Priyanka, it's lovely to have you here. Rutu's given us a great segue into the importance of communities, brands being built by women, and POPxo certainly stands out. But there's some data as well, and Comscore India's data from October 17 to 18 tells us a few numbers. These are headlines. First, India is adding more women to the internet every year than any other country in the world. Second, the percentage growth of women on e-commerce is twice that of the growth of women on the internet. So, women on e-commerce are growing at 70%, and they far outscore the men. And the third, that 90% of urban women between 25 and 34, and I think the number is about 25 million women active at a certain point of time, could actually have been found on a retail site on the internet over the last year. I see you've chosen to speak to us today about women-oriented e-commerce platforms. Is this the perfect moment or the perfect storm?
I think women have been a story that's been happening for a while, and brands and marketers have just been slow to understand what it's all about, right? If you look at even traditional households, decisions, while on paper might look it's a male credit card that's being swiped, but women are often the influencers behind decisions that happen. Today, women are becoming agents in themselves, in which they themselves are the ones who are spending money, etc. But as Rutu said very powerfully, that brands and marketeers are just not understanding. The tropes are old and the mediums are old. I mean, the first rule and law of marketing, as all of you already know, is find the user where she is. And millennial women are on their mobile phones, right? Magazines, paper magazines, all of us know what the readerships are on those. So if you have to reach your female consumer, if you have to reach her on the mobile phone, you use mediums that speak to her in a way that she likes and understands, right? No woman today likes being spoken down to. No woman today likes being stereotyped. No woman today likes being told that she's less in any capacity. But a lot of the messages that we get from ads, etc., do exactly that. So if you're talking to the millennial woman today, you have to understand her way and speak her language in a way that she feels an affinity to your brand. Simple ways of doing that are, I mean, pink is of course classic, right? It's easy, it's lazy, and you just turn something pink and you suddenly are female friendly. It's exactly not that. It's in many ways going deeper to understand who she is, what her motivation is, and why is she going to be buying a financial product, and what motivates her to do that. All those things have to come out by understanding where the female consumer lies. And that's where a lot of the data that we look at POPxo comes true. In a month, we will create 1,500 stories. We will create at least 100 videos every month. We put it out to the audience. We know exactly what they're consuming. Women ask and answer questions on our platform. We know what they're asking and answering in real time. All that data we pool together to understand what she's feeling and thinking at any given moment. That then informs the next batch of stories and the next batch of videos that we create. And that gives us the broad trends in what she's interested in. If a company like POPxo, which is just about coming to like 5 years this March, if we can do it at scale, where we are reaching 39 million women across platforms every month, I have a whole bunch of legacy brands and big brands with big budgets sitting in the room right now. They should definitely be able to do the same thing. We do it because we are a female-focused brand, and our mission in life is just to understand women better and to reach them better. I think all brands who are looking to make a significant positive impact on their top and bottom lines should be doing exactly the same. It's the low-hanging fruit. The brands who do that first are the brands who will be able to capture the market and capture this unoccupied space. It's a brand, it's a big unoccupied space right now, right? So I think it's high time that we understand that it's doable and it's possible, because brands like POPxo have already begun to do so. And if you're selling anything today, please, you have to be selling to women, because they are the ones who are not being spoken to, and they're just waiting to be spoken to. I don't know what further incentive would any company need, right? And millennial women, again, repeating myself, don't like being spoken down to. They like being empowered, they like being considered empowered, and they're not the second person on the table. They are the first person on the table now.
Telling, and this is somebody who's really created a brand for women. I've spoken to you about this before, and Rutu mentioned it as well, this whole thing of women creating brands for women. And I know that your company is 68% women, mostly millennial women, and your leadership is 60% women. How much of that reflects in the brand?
So, till we were 50 people in the company, we were 100% women. And then we added tech, e-commerce, now we are 170 people in the company, and the sex ratio has changed a little bit more. But because the DNA of the company is female, it's a bunch of women who've kind of built the company, who started the company, the way that we run, the way that we think, that discounting that everyone just almost automatically and unconsciously does, even though they don't want to, that doesn't happen in POPxo. And the team of people creating the content, the team of people distributing the content are actually the users as well. So there's a deep connect with the people that we are with the women that we are trying to reach. And that hugely helps. I mean, at the risk of sounding awful, but I don't think a man could have built a company like POPxo. It takes kind of a team of women to do that.
But I do have another question for you, which is, we often accuse the men for stereotyping women, particularly in marketing and ads. But do sometimes women also stereotype women, and is that something to be cautious about?
I think all of us can do it at any given point in time, right? And especially in today's day and age, staying aware, staying conscious, and staying very aware of everything that we are saying and doing is important. And it's not to say that, oh my God, like, women are in the room, so let's just leave. It's not to say that. But you're in a digital age today. Everything that you do can have a massive repercussion on your personal brand, on the brand of your company, on everything that actually matters. So it's not just men, it's not just women, but all of us as a whole have to be conscious of what we are saying and doing and what is the impression that's coming forward. You guys, it might be a room like this when you could be kind of exchanging what might seem like a funny banter, but you have to think of the impact that might have on someone and be conscious of it. Like women, we do it all the time, right? If we enter a space, we kind of have our boundaries already kind of circumscribed around us because we've been kind of feeling it for a long time. But it's time that men become aware that we've been doing it, right? If a woman enters a bus, you will see her standing in a certain way. Men don't have to do that. But we do it, but there has to come to a point where the men in the bus realize that we have to make sure that she doesn't feel that she has to kind of squeeze herself in a corner. So I think these are important discussions. I'm really glad that we're actually finally having them in a space that's open and they're being discussed. I know there's a lot of hype and hysteria at one point, but it's a correction. It's high time that this was coming.
And this is the marketing community.
Absolutely.
This is 25 brands.
And see, Ritu kept saying that you guys are supposed to reflect what's happening in the real world. But I also worry that every single time an ad plays in which a woman is being shown anything less, you're also telling the young girl watching that ad, this is what reality is, right? So that has to change because it's a self kind of perpetuating circle at this point. Marketers believe, predominantly male marketers believe that women are a certain way, so that's what they portray. The young women who are watching it then get told that reality is like this. So then you have to kind of squeeze yourself in a corner. So, I mean, you guys are kind of the perfect audience that can actually put a stop to what I think is a complete travesty. And don't do it for any empowerment reasons. Do it for the bottom line, because that is where you will begin to see a positive impact.
And so speaks a brand builder who's actually launched e-com and successfully so. Any questions? Yeah. Sorry, there's lots of questions. So there's Praveen, and then I know there's Puneet and Ankur. Yeah.
Great thoughts. You are perhaps one of the only media portal which is offering content in different languages. I think it's 6 to 7 Indian languages. 6 languages. So one, we would be very eager to understand what percentage of your traffic is coming from non-English speaking audience, and what are your insights about that? 2, do you have any recommendations for the brand managers and marketeers in this room that what can they do about that audience which is online, vernacular, and potentially not an urban audience?
Sure. So we launched in English, and we actually had a small adventure in Hindi a couple of years ago. We couldn't figure out how to crack the Hindi female audience. We had to shut down Hindi for a little while, and we relaunched Hindi again early this year. And we launched in Tamil, Telugu, Bangla, and Marathi 2 weeks ago. So as of today, POPxo is available in 6 languages. We don't translate in all the languages. We actually create original content in all the 6 languages. English, of course, the news has been out for a while. We know exactly what's happening in English. The Hindi audience is actually growing at a much faster pace, although on a lower base as far as the English audience is concerned. And the other languages, Bangla and Marathi, are actually growing much faster as compared to Tamil and Telugu. So a couple of things that we know in trying to run a multilingual platform that's actually original content. The English user versus the Hindi user, there is a dramatic difference. In the beginning, we tried translating. Translation doesn't work. What matters to the English female user, the same things might matter to the Hindi female user, but the proportionality is different. The kind of things that you're selling, the kind of messages you're giving, they have to be bespoke, they have to be curated and created for the audience that you're trying to speak to. So even in the 4 languages that we've launched, although I don't speak any of or read any of those 4 languages, we are still taking broad guesses right now. And over time, once we start seeing responses to certain stories and content being put out, we will begin to change our content mix accordingly. So it's a data game. There's no way that you can put out 1,500 stories in a month just by waking up in the morning and thinking, hey, I'm going to write this today. It doesn't happen like that. So you look at a lot of data to understand what exactly are you putting out. So the news is still kind of going to be out on that. But like the Hindi user, for example, is far more interested in, say, beauty and hair as she is than in fashion. the English user has a little bit more propensity towards fashion stories versus makeup stories. So all those insights are things that basically sit with us. The second part of your question was, just,
So what is your message for the market?
yeah, so I mean, my thing is, firstly, get women in your teams. If you don't have women in your teams, you have no one to represent, and then you are just trying to speak for something that you, like, I would never want to do an ad, do a campaign for a purely male brand, because I don't presume to understand men very well, right? Similarly, get women in your teams and listen to when they're talking. Like, it's still automatic for all of us to kind of just behave in a certain way, right? So just notice what you're doing, let them speak, and give them the creative freedom to actually to express what they're saying. That would be my first thing, right? If you're going to an X ad agency, if they're pitching for your account, just notice how many women they bring into the room. If they're not bringing enough women into the room, they're not going to be able to create a campaign that actually speaks to women, right? So those are simple checks that you guys can have when you're trying to kind of create a message that how is it going to resonate. If you have something coming out when you're trying to test out a line or you're going to test out kind of an ad campaign, just make sure that you are showing it to enough women beforehand and just to see the reactions that they are getting. And all this is not lip service, because a lot, and I'm not going to give examples, but there are a lot of tone deaf campaigns that just come out, and then women in the room are just thinking, what were they thinking, right? So your brand should not be the brand that makes those mistakes, and it simply happens because there just were not enough women in the room at the time when a campaign was being decided. So yeah, so that would be my main thing. Get women in your team and just make sure that whoever that you're using to create the campaign with, your partners there, have enough women there to just be the checks in place.
All right. I will close this discussion. Thank you very much. That was fantastic, and I think wonderful to go from the need for communities to real communities and communities that are profitable, and the ability to actually build not just a successful brand but a successful business around women as customers. And I think the lessons are telling. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
My next guest is Pankaj Duhan, Chief Marketing Officer, Reckitt Benckiser, South Asia Health. He brings with him more than 15 years of blue chip experience across categories, geographies, and business models. He started his career with Procter & Gamble in 2002 and has successful stints in countries such as Australia, Singapore, India, and Thailand. His two most recent roles were Director Skincare China and Director Hair Care North and South America. Pankaj, insight mining is 101 marketing. Yet we feel the need to speak about it, which is good, I guess, and we should keep talking about it. And fittingly, after Rutu and Priyanka, clearly there seems to be the need for many of us to be searching for more insight. I know that in RB and in general in your career, insights has been a very, very, very large part of the success stories that you've charted. Talk to us about the process. Talk to us about the what, how it's different from the how. Tell us how insight mining can actually change some of the conversation in this room if we were to meet again.
I think first of all, it is very critical for yourself to put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. And if it is a woman consumer, it doesn't matter, and you're a man, it doesn't matter, you still have to put yourself in the shoes of the consumer, right? And understand the trials and tribulations, understands the moments and feelings of joy, understand what she goes through and what gives her delight. And I genuinely believe any good marketer does not need to be a great marketer, but a good marketer, if you put yourself into the shoes of the consumers and genuinely make the effort to understand, find the barriers to trial, find the barriers to overcome, and therefore what will truly delight the consumers, that is the first starting point. The second is to use all the technology at your disposal. There is tremendous amount of technology that is available for us. Predictive analytics, you can predict so many things. You can predict the future and you appear fast doing it, like when you actually go. And not many people actually go and take advantage of it. Dettol, for example, one of the big, like really iconic brands in India that I look after, actually uses predictive analytics to predict 3 weeks in advance an outbreak of a flu. Okay, and that is simply, getting metrics of the temperature, okay, at the same time the humidity, okay, and the conversations on the digital platforms that are cropping up. Okay, those are all predictors and signs of how the flu outbreaks will happen, and it happens at a different time in Srinagar, it happens at a different time in Chennai, and it happens at a different time in Lucknow, for example. We were able to you take pollution as a category, for example, and in pollution as a category, it's a category that is active for about 6 weeks in the year, even though like the PM 2.5 exists right throughout the year and it's at a high level, but it exists for 6 weeks, 8 weeks in Delhi, for example. Okay, and there you have to get all of your focus, your marketing, your attention, your insights into that 6 week period, because 70% of your sales will happen in those 6 weeks period for the masks and so on and so forth. And there you're able to predict the upsurge of the concern related to this by marrying the wind speed, the temperature, and the crop burning. Okay, so if you marry the three together, you're able to predict to a very high degree of accuracy on when would the concern actually rise the highest, right? And this has not just a benefit to the bottom line and the top line, and so to speak, but also has societal advantages. For flus, you will give out preventive messages and so on and so forth, because prevention is one of the biggest forms of cure. So that is the second part of it. The third is, I think many times we underestimate the power of the character of the brand. And I wanted to actually go back. In the previous session, we were talking a little bit about how brands talk down to women. So one of the brands that I look after is Durex. Okay, it's in the sexual well-being category, makes condoms amongst other things. It's a great brand. It stands for safety, durability, reliability, and so on and so forth. But it's a category which to a outsider might seem like which talks down to women. It objectifies women. It's a category that tends to do that. If you take a look at some of the advertisements, it is a category where cheap is good, so to speak. Sometimes it may feel like that, etc. And disproportionately, women tend to use Durex more than any other brand. I mean, that's the data that we had. And I'm now retrofitting, because this is not what we actually designed to do, but this is a brand that has never ever talked down to women. It always stands for equality of the woman, and you look at the commercials, for example, you'll be able to see it for themselves.
It's a good case study.
It always tries to have all the digital content placed on intelligent humor. Okay, humor that is not slapstick, but has to have an essence of intelligence in it. Okay, and it is premium, and it is safe and reliable. And when I look back and think about it, isn't that what a woman actually sometimes looks for in a guy? Okay, isn't that what you would actually look for in your partner as well? And when you put those things together, maybe the consumers are actually starting to move from just buying benefits to buying the personality of the brand, the character of the brand, the purpose of the brand, and so on and so forth. So those would be three of my tips, my learnings, my insights of how to go about doing it.
Outstanding. You are on the hot seat, so there will be questions.
Absolutely.
Who's going to start?
I bet it's going to be on Durex.
No, Durex is an interesting category, because the truth is it's still got lots of taboos. And part of the reason it has taboos is because there is a whole conversation around what you can show and what you can't show. Is that also about sensitivity to women as an audience, or is that more around just cultural taboos and our inability to express brands the way they should be?
See, you have to, as a marketer, you have to ask yourself the question: are you trying to sell the product, or are you genuinely trying to improve the lives of the consumer? The moment you answer the answer as you're genuinely trying to improve the lives or to bring sexual equality, in this case, for example, your execution will turn out excellent. You don't need to worry about it. The moment you start to sell the product, you will get into all of these stereotypes because those are formulas that you need to go after.
Yeah. So somebody had a question and I.
So Pankaj, very interesting perspective. Do you have any insights on the kind of conversations that happen around condoms for women?
See, the problem is the conversations don't happen. Okay, that is the biggest problem because nobody wants to talk about it. Okay, and one of the roles of a leadership brand, and I'm not talking about market leadership brand, I'm talking about thought leadership brands. Okay, the one of the roles of the thought leadership brands is to get the conversations out in the open. Okay, it'll improve the sexual equality, and when it improves the sexual equality, the market share will come to you. It'll come to you. You don't need to run after it. You get the equality right and the market share will come to you. It may not come immediately, but it will come to you. So that's what I would say. There is, if you get into the statistics of the sexual well-being category, etc., like it is amazing and horrifying at the same time. Like when you think about it, of all the sexual occasions that happen in India, only 5% actually use condoms, and that is claimed. Okay. Nobody uses condoms. Why? Because the guy doesn't think, okay, that he needs a condom. Why? Because it will reduce the sexual pleasure. And what does a woman do? Sometimes, not all the times, actually comes back and makes herself subservient, right, to that point of view. And what is needed is don't make yourself subservient to that point of view because you have your own point of view. And what about your... So there is tons to be done. There is tons to be done, and I believe all brands, marketeers, this is one example. You take another category and you'll find all of these kinds of issues, right, that you should solve. You solve an issue, the market share will come.
I love the fact that through episodes, I found all our conversations actually go back to marketing 101. Give the brand a purpose, the business will follow. Ankur, you had a question.
I believe as brands, we face a lot of challenges, and challenges being a very dynamic ecosystem, challenges differ from day to day and from year to year. So as a brand, my question to you is, since there is a lot of conversations around empathy and trust in the air around messaging, because for any campaign to be successful, there has to be a context and the ability to anticipate how the consumers will consume that messaging. So are there any specific, my question number one is, one or two, any challenges that you may have faced as a brand in any of your product lines within the past year in messaging completely to the mass audience, where there has been a challenge making the concept in messaging to women in particular? And my second part of the question is, how did you overcome that challenge if there has been a challenge like that?
Be true to yourself. Again, be true to what the brand is. So first, understanding the brand is very important. Understanding the personality, the character, the benefit of the brand is very important. Once you understand that, that is what you need to communicate. You shouldn't change that. You don't change it to the consumer, right? You communicate that. But what you do is you communicate it in a way that makes it relevant for her, right? So what you need to do is not to find out a new benefit, a new platform, a new positioning for yourself. You find out a new way of making it relevant for her, okay? So that is so let me give, it's not an example for women per se, but I'll give an example of in a brand. The brand Dettol is all about protection from germs, okay? And therefore it has many consequences, etc., okay? The moment you veer away from protection from germs, because that is what the consumer says that she wants, okay? That is not a space that you can occupy. You will never be successful. It doesn't matter. It might look attractive. You will never be successful. So therefore, you need to figure out ways of making germs more relevant. And hopefully, have an impact on the life that is visible to be seen. So don't veer away from that. Be true to who you are, and understanding yourself is the most important thing.
Excellent. On that note, thank you very much, Pankaj.
Thank you
That
so
was
much.
wonderful.
Thank you.
My next guest is Gulbahar Taurani, Marketing Director, Phillips. A veteran of the small durables industry, Gulbahar has been instrumental in establishing Phillips as a clear market leader in the space it operates in. He's also credited for single-handedly creating the air fryer, which is a millennium health gadget. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm certainly not going with the cliche question, what do women want? But I have a sneaking suspicion that it's a question that's becoming bigger in our marketing war rooms. It certainly is becoming bigger in my office. As a category, appliances and durables and small appliances have always sort of assigned traditional roles to women for good reason or bad reason. I've been there. I personally accept it to have been a fact. But today's young woman is empowered with information, with technology, with an increasing financial independence and confidence. It's a whole new world. How are you adopting this new world order, and how are you adapting to this very, very rapid transformation?
First of all, after hearing all the thoughts on this show, I was expecting a question like this. So I knew that the question is not going to be simple. See, one way of looking at it is like I can always say, no, things are changing. But of course, things are changing, but we also need to accept the reality first. Then only the change will happen. Now, if you look at it, what I see more and more, and we had a chat around, don't do it for empowerment, do it for your top line, do it for your bottom line. And as marketers, as business heads, that becomes one of the prime responsibilities. So what I see in and around me, and especially in the industry that I am in, that more and more brands are embracing the rise of the modern woman. Okay, they are not only acknowledging the inherent capabilities, but the power of the technology that is coming to them. Okay, because a combination of two is actually empowering them more and more, and that's why you will see that not only brands are consciously taking this effort of not just hammering messages on them and praying that they get swayed by this, but very softly they are actually exposing them with their message. Okay, allowing them to understand, evaluate, and buy the story on the merit of the story. And once they know that if there is a buy-in of the story, then that's a force. Okay, and that's a force which not only actually has an impact on a particular individual, but if there is a buy-in of the story, and if you are able to expose the woman in a very relevant way about the story, and if you have a buy-in, they actually take your story forward. And you will see that that was also there traditionally, but with media and with the new technology that they have, actually the scalability is something which is possible now. And before I go to one of the examples wherein we were facing a business problem and how do we reach out to the millennials, and I would like to share with you one of the stories around air fryer. So you said we were able to, and thanks for calling it as a millennium gadget. And I personally believe that when we were introducing air fryer to India, again, there are stereotypes.
Tell us what an air fryer is.
Okay, so air fryer is an appliance which can get you your favorite fried food without oil, right? And trust you me, even today when I go and speak to people and say, you can have your favorite samosa without oil, people don't believe me.
I don't.
Yeah. So exactly the challenge that I had. Not only that, stereotypes are of different types, and I would just go to a stereotype in terms of pricing also. So normally when you are operating in a small kitchen appliances business, you say the ticket size of that business is only 2,500, 3,000, and you are bringing a gadget. First, the claim is almost like impossible, can't be. Yeah? And whenever you say healthy and fried, doesn't come along naturally. It's only healthy and baked. So we have to actually establish something which is healthy and fried. Now, again, one is price. Second, it's a cooking appliance, and you can always say, there is a way you have to reach out to the audience. But if you understand the problem, you remain genuine to the promise that you are making, and then if you reach out to the consumers without stereotyping everything and look at who is your TG and how are you reaching out to them, actually it makes sense to them. So there were a lot of stories around, and we had spoken in the show earlier also around this is how you should project an air fryer since it's a cooking appliance, and these were all traditional thoughts. If you look at the campaign that we did on air fryers, it was actually a risky campaign. First proposition which you are still not ready to believe, so I will organize a demo for you, and I can tell you that you are going to take
Discount
my
coupons.
story, you won't ask for discount for sure. The proposition is so strong, and in fact you are going to take it forward. So one, risky proposition. Second, then you are going to but when we were making that entire campaign, we never thought of like we have to project it in a particular way or not. We realized that this is a gadget, this is an appliance which is going to appeal both men and women. Okay, so let's not do something which is very traditional and all. We went out and we created a situation, and basis the merit of the story, we went for that. And today it's such a pride to to feel like you have introduced something to the market and you have actually raised the bar for others. And today air fryer is something which is becoming almost like a household phenomenon, and it's the new way of cooking. And that's where if you just stay true to your promise and just stay connected to the audiences, I think half of the problem is solved, and the stereotypes go automatically. However, the second thing that I just wanted to share was when we say that there is an inherent capability to influence with women, and we heard everyone that they are more into the influencer position rather than taking the actual call, whether that's financial products or anything else. I think that's also changing. Okay. And that we discovered, and again in one of the cases wherein we wanted to actually create content which we can take it to our consumers, and that's where the idea of digital guerrilla army came to us. And what we did was we called for the influencers in that particular category without looking at whether that's men, women, predominantly a women category. So that's what you stereotype it from a cooking appliances point of view. We created a workshop. We called people who can actually make difference to our story. We had an expert in that workshop. They got to learn a lot of tips and tricks from the expert. We immersed them with the products, allowed them to use the product and feel the benefits of it, and that's it. After that, if you see the power that technology brings in and the way the content was created, and today we have a digital guerrilla army which takes the brand story forward for us and does a lot of things which actually sometimes we are surprised, because the way they discover our propositions and then the way they communicate about our products is sometimes is even much
Inside
much
also,
yeah, it's much better than what you think as a brand and the owner of the product category. So that's it.
I have a question for you. I know in a previous conversation where you and me were talking about something else, you had mentioned to me that even now, even though it's changing rapidly, even now, if there's a purchase over 5,000 rupees, you tend to find that it's the man using a credit card, not the woman. But e-commerce is certainly changing that at a really fast pace, because if Comscore's data is to be believed, women aren't just moving into e-commerce, they're driving and running e-commerce. And for your categories, that would most certainly be true. And if it is, how does that customer journey work? Because that customer journey most certainly would initiate somewhere in the digital space and end on the internet.
So I think e-commerce is fast emerging as one of the channels wherein appliances as a category is growing, right? And you are absolutely right. You see a little bit different behavior from the consumer side when you go to the e-commerce bit of it. And when we were talking, I said it's when it comes to technology, even today you see, the influencer is there, but the final transaction you see at least the husband and wife, or father or a daughter, or that's coming together. But on e-commerce, you see a trend wherein women are buying, and the ratio of female consumers is actually increasing. And that's where you will see a lot of content from the brands is made with a thought that how do you appeal or how do you make yourself relevant to the consumer and the consumer needs. And that you will see more and more happening, especially in the consumer durables and the small appliances industry, because that's the shift which is very, very clear.
Sorry, Rajiv has a question, and then from you.
So, out of your portfolio, can you, while focusing on sort of one brand that particularly does well with millennial women, can you give us some insight on whether your journey was sort of more audience in or it was more product out?
See, I think, if you look at how we have evolved as a brand, it was more like what the audience want today, because we have a legacy of an electronics brand. And from there, we moved towards health and well-being brand. That's the change, that's the shift we brought in. And that change was not because it was product out. That was more about audience in, that what are the audience looking for, what is the consumer saying to us. And that's where we in fact looked at our brand promise and went to a brand promise which says we need to improve 3 billion lives by 2025. And that is more about consumers and consumer centric. So that's the approach that we have taken.
Okay. Praveen, quickly.
Quick question. So, first of all, you have made my life difficult because I brought a air fryer, Phillips air fryer, and now my wife tells me it's weekend, you prepare the breakfast. So on that note, but while it was on a lighter note, but the fact of the matter is, while today's topic is about marketing it to the millennial woman, but have you not thought about marketing it to the millennial men with this kind of a product?
See, so as I said, when we were doing this product, we were not thinking men, women. We realized that it is, it appeals to both. So instead of looking at from a cooking appliances point of view and buying into traditional stories, we said it appeals to both. And that's where we took the risky proposition. In fact, the communication is also around the men cooking and, at least initiating.
That's why you bought
it.
it.
Yeah, that's where. So that's the idea. The idea is not to, focus on a particular gender, or it's about what's the appeal and how you make it relevant.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Pleasure.
My next guest is Pushpanjali Banerji, founder and director at Tali Media and brand director at the Kyndal Group. With over 10 years of experience in advertising and marketing, Pushpanjali is responsible for putting together key marketing initiatives for Kyndal's brands both in India and abroad. Welcome to HT. Pushpanjali today will share her views on the evolving world of alcoholic beverages for women. A few years ago, alcoholic beverages, women, marketing, this would not have been a conversation. So I'm actually very excited by that. And I'm also excited by the fact that we finally have a millennial woman talking about millennial women and, breaking the stereotypes, talking about alcoholic beverages and marketing them to women. So welcome. Pushpanjali, a few years ago, it would have been a non-conversation talking about alcoholic beverages, women and marketing. But you're clearly breaking some taboos there. Tell us a little bit about that journey. Tell us whether this is actually, consumer in, how difficult has it been to break taboos, and give us some examples of, what you've done and how it's working.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, I remember when we were giving away frying pans with Bowls brandy, and the insight was that we were in this bar in Whitefield called Pinjra Bar, where I used to go with. I was just a brand manager at that time, and I used to go for all the research which we used to continuously keep doing. And I was sitting next to this guy who was drinking, and I was asking him why is he drinking, what he's drinking, all of that. And he was drinking
Just any guy, and you were talking to
just
him.
any guy, you know. I was the only woman there. It was like a totally hole in the wall bar. You're fed up of your work. You go there, you knock back a few, and then you.
And you ask questions.
Yeah, and then you bump into market research people who are just trying to. So he was drinking Smirnoff vodka, which was very weird for me because it was Bangalore and that time of the day, and mostly it's brown spirits that are being consumed. And his reason for drinking vodka was that his wife will be able to smell the spirit in his breath, and basically she's not going to give him anything to eat when he gets home. That was the way women were looked at, that okay, how can we appease her so that he can drink, you know. That was really a tactic. And a lot of brands even now give away tiffin carriers, frying pans, so that when he gets home, he has a frying pan in his hand, and she's like, "Oh wow, you got a frying pan, and you know, go back there and get me another one." So, so women are a big part of the alcobev industry, and coming up with ways and means to make her happy, and and hence have the male consumer drinking, and that's slowly and steadily, of course, it is changing. There's so many women now who drink. They drink whiskey, they drink beer, they drink everything. And few years ago, people used to say that, oh, wine is for women, and vodka is for women, and no woman likes whiskey. And I meet women all the time who are breaking those rules. I remember we did like a little pop-up bar with Kati Saak. We did that at Little Black Book, Delhi before. I think they got their second round of funding, so it was still a smallish team. Now they're like a massive company, and there were about 35 women in the room, and only one guy, some techie in the background, who was supposed to be the software or some guy, and they were like schooling my bartender that the whiskey sour that you've made is wrong, and this is not the recipe of a whiskey sour, and you are way out of depth. And for me, that was the time when it was like an eye-opening experience for me. And we just thrown together some very, nice palatable cocktails that everybody will enjoy. It's like a crowd pleaser, a couple of hits, like make a mint julep, but make it with whiskey, or make a nice whiskey sour, load it with, don't let the egg sort of come out. But women were like so quick to catch, oh, this is sweeter than what it needs to be, or this is got too much mint, or, And I realized, wow, things have changed, and they know their drinks, they know what they want, and they were so. It was lovely actually to see that energy, and maybe that was because they were mostly women in that room, because a lot of what the earlier, I think what that lady also shared, Priyanka shared, that how in the bus you're actually standing in the corner, but when you're given that environment, then you see women really open up and come into their own. And I see a lot of that behavior being reflected now, because there's so much of because of social media, there's so much of power behind community, that you can be a woman who doesn't have to get married, or it's okay to not say no to kids, or it's okay to pursue a career. There's so many women. I mean, Archana's an inspiration for me. Yes, you are. So there are a lot of women who've sort of written their own path, and they're able to share their story, and that's sort of motivated a lot of people to come forward and to live different lives and to choose their own. So yeah, it's an exciting time, and Alcobev is responding, but we don't want to respond like say that, oh, especially for women,
no pink beers.
No, because honestly, women hate that, like when it's engineered or doctored to be for a woman, like we don't get, as if we don't get stuff, which is so stupid. I mean, I know women who can, I mean, do everything better than a guy, like everything, yeah. whether it's cocktails or it's rolling something, you know what I mean. But women can do everything better. So, sorry.
Okay, questions. Archana, sorry, Karan.
I'm just curious what you think about Johnny Walker doing Jane Walker. It has to get your blood curling at some
It
level,
did.
right?
It did. I didn't want to name them. Now that you have, I can talk about it.
What do you think? What do you think went in that brand manager's head or the marketing manager's head? Why would you think somebody like them would do something like that?
Thought you'd get invited to this forum. Did.
But Karan, I'm happy you brought that up because I didn't want to say anything about them. But I think that maybe a guy was behind it who didn't even consider that maybe it was like, oh, it was Women's Day, and they tried to take a spin on it and call it Jane Walker rather than Johnny Walker, and it ticked off so many women worldwide. They were like, oh my God, I never thought before I reached for my bottle of Johnny that it wasn't for me all along. Suddenly women felt alienated that all this time I'm using this product thinking that it's as much mine as it's yours, but you've put a question in my head that, oh, it was never Jane, it was always Johnny. So I feel that that was a big mistake. That was a little bit like Dove trying to do the whole, bottles in the shape of women's bodies, which I thought was taking the concept too far. When you're over engineering a concept and you're like trying to make it so relevant that it's irrelevant by the time it gets executed. So I think that was a very classical, what not to do.
What not to do.
Yeah,
we should have a list like that also.
How not to do it.
Rajiv has a question.
So I'll start on a. Give me a look. I'll start on a lighter note. So I'm one of those people who my team makes fun of constantly because I'll go for the good tasting drink, which will invariably turn out to be pink. And so in terms of take me through the process, right? Because a lot of senior leaders in teams are men, as we've discussed here. And so now let's say you've got this amazing insight about millennial women because you've done your consumer research and now you are a millennial woman and now you're trying to break through and actually go and get that decision made. So can you take us through, what's the process and what are the difficulties you encounter?
So, I don't think I have a plan, which is like A to B or answer. But what I do believe in is research. I constantly do research. Even when I'm having a conversation with people, in my mind I'm making notes about how they come across, and it's amazing the kind of stuff you learn from people who may not even be connected to your product. They may just be, you learn how people think. And I remember we were having this we've got a channel in Tali. It's called Cocktail Crew India. We just recently launched a film on it with which was in which Devendu Sharma is playing the lead. So we keep doing these little films, these short films where we call a lot of millennial audience, men and women. And one of the very interesting things that I learned there was that a girl told me like this girl basically works with Accenture and well-to-do. The other lady was working in a bank. So that's the kind of crowd that I had, and they were also bloggers and writers in their free time because everybody has 2 jobs now, right? And she said that I asked her a simple question. I said, "What will you make of a guy who orders a cocktail in your date with him?" versus a guy who orders a scotch on the rocks. And this was because we were coming out with an entire campaign on what cocktails to push for Kati Saag for the coming season. So I could have never imagined the answer that girl gave me. She said that if a guy is going to order cocktails, I'm totally judging him. And I said, why? She said, because if he knows too much about mixing drinks, then I don't know, it's a little effeminate to me, which was shocking because you have this whole movement about, oh, we have to be so accepting of women and women are out now, but how do they feel about men doing things in a female territory is a little, or something that they don't fully, I think there's a bridge to climb on both sides, right? And so this woman said that, but if a guy orders a scotch on the rocks, then I'll think that he's, more my kind of guy. So I said, Why? Because it's expensive or he's got taste? She said, no, because he'll drink it slowly and he'll talk to me.
Perfect. Great.
Okay.
So,
On that note,
yes.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
My next guest is Alok Shankar, Country General Manager, Fitbit. Alok has over 25 years of experience in the field of sales, operations, finance, networking, IT, and HR. Well, that's a lot of things.
That's a lot of things.
That's why he's country manager.
Did you notice no marketing?
No marketing. He has worked in dynamically changing market conditions. He has an in-depth understanding of fast-moving technology, goods and communication devices, and Fitbit fits all of that into one. Alok, most of us are aware that millennials are redefining healthy living. We've had a little chat about it in a previous session as well. A decade ago or so, exercising was synonymous with old-fashioned gym, but that's changed a lot. And eating clean was about maintaining the right balance and a plate full of food and how much of what there should be. Cut to today, and what you see is an influx of fitness trends, which, by the way, come every week and go every week, right? Trends that appeal to millennials. Some of them are fads, some of them stay, but a lot of that has to do with lifestyle and a change in the way we look at fitness itself. And it's fascinating that technology and lifestyle find such a great intersection at this point, and Fitbit is such a great case study. On that cue, tell us how a brand like Fitbit is entering into a category where I would like to believe that women are big consumers, and or at least increasingly bigger sets of consumers. Are there exciting projects in the pipeline? How are you tackling this? How do you think about the millennial woman, this whole lifestyle technology intersection?
Thank you for giving me such a good cue into this discussion, and you're actually right. For us, maybe thankfully, the challenge is not to sort of drive more women, because if you look at globally, actually women are more than 50% of Fitbit users. So we already start from a very healthy platform in that sense, right? And I guess if you really see, being fit is very difficult, right? All of us know that. I'm sure we just outside talking about what's your New Year resolution. Odds on, often people say to get fit and healthier, and it hardly lasts maybe 4 weeks. A gym membership, all of us get sort of gifted gym card, gym memberships and all of that. But being healthy is actually all about driving behavior change, right? It is trying to make those lifestyle adjustments and changes on what you do on a daily basis. Some things that you do maybe small amounts, but consistently and regularly over a period of time will help you drive that change and actually achieve your goal of fitness and well-being, right? And each one of us may have it differently. And I guess women are no different, right? Women have their own needs. They are unique in their own sense. They maybe do have some sort of extra needs, if anything. For example, female health is such a big aspect, right? We did have a discussion around, Durex in the past, but the fact of the matter is that for men and women, so many sort of fitness needs are common, but female health is definitely unique to women and very integral part of their well-being, right? So what at Fitbit we are doing is that in our apps, if you see, we have a whole sort of section dedicated around female health. So women can track their cycles. They can actually then understand their cycles better, because that has an impact on a lot of other things, and it has a lot of bearings on other wellness aspects for women. So we are doing that. And as you said, it's actually an ecosystem. To be healthy, it requires an entire ecosystem. Just having a wearable is not good enough, right? I'm sure you would have heard a lot about the 10,000 steps, right? Especially with Fitbit, we kind of pioneered
Heard
that.
and tried and failed. And
Heard and tried, and so what next kind of a thing, right? So you can have a tracker. Often people say, oh, I can count my steps on the phone, so what's the big deal? So it's not only about a hardware piece. Yes, definitely you need a good tracker, and the difference is that when you wear a tracker or a smart watch, it's actually on your wrist 24/7, right, all the time. So it does help you gather more accurate and information throughout the 24 hours, for example. So one is the hardware aspect. The other aspect is certainly the app, right? All of us are living on apps. We have app for everything, which actually then consolidates the view to your health scorecard, so to say, right? But then again, you might say, oh, I walked 10,000 steps and my weight is X kilograms, and I can see that on my app too. Now what next? And I think where Fitbit is sort of using technology is to try and make that what next individual and meaningful to you, right? Because you may be fitter than I am, right? So when you walk 10,000 steps, the exertion that you do is probably lesser than what I do if I'm totally unfit, right? So my algorithms, the big data that I have, and I use it to give you insights to say, hey, where you are in your journey and what do you need to do to reach your fitness goals and continue to improve, right? So that is where the ecosystem piece comes in. We do a lot of data crunching, and we give you insightful and meaningful and actionable sort of things to do what you want to do. For example, if you were on a journey to lose weight, okay, then what do I need to do? It might be quite different for, say, me if I'm trying to run half a marathon or try and run 10 kilometers. So that is where company like especially Fitbit is doing is it's using the best in the hardware, the best app that we can do, and then use the big data to make that experience meaningful to you. And I think that also sort of connects back with making it meaningful to the millennial woman and giving every person the information and the knowledge that is required for them to achieve their goals. That's really what we are trying to do.
Interesting. Personalized experiences is a
it is personalized experiences and making sense for what you want to do. I don't want to tell you what you should do. Your health and fitness goal is your own, right? We just want to enable you to reach that in the best possible manner.
Very interesting. The questions? Yes. So there's two questions here. Daman, you want to start?
Hi, I'm Daman. So I remember seeing an aggregation of data that you've done across countries, just to show how fit different countries are and stuff like that. I have two questions. One is, what are some of the top use cases that folks in India are buying your product for? And what are some of the top use cases that you see them not using the product for? Because you have signals which tell you what the person is using the product for. Are they very different from some of the other countries where you have far more penetration? The second question is, do you see different usage patterns between men and women at an aggregate level in India specifically? And the reason I ask that is because, like you said, more than 50% of the users abroad are women. The concept of fitness, what I've got to understand in our country is fairly different. Like you said, khana acha khao to you get fit. So between men and women, are there significant differences that you see in terms of usage patterns or in terms of aggregate data?
Okay, so let me try and answer. Hopefully, I'll remember all the questions. Otherwise, you can prompt me back.
I mean, to simplify both the questions, we're looking for insights. A, us versus the world, and B, men versus women.
So us versus the world. I'll start off. I think one of the studies that we did, and it was widely reported, was actually on sleep, because Fitbit is actually doing a lot of work globally on sleep. Our data is actually almost lab quality that we do. And the interesting bit was that we were the second most sleep deprived country in the world, only next to Japan.
I believe that.
Right. So as you would have seen that. So that is one insight that was very, very interesting. And as you would have read, more and more the studies are showing that sleep is actually a very, very core and a critical element of your overall well-being. Even if you want to lose weight, you need to sleep well, right? If you want to have, manage your lifestyle related diseases, you need to sleep well, right? And at least sleep a minimum number of hours, okay? So that is in some sense, the global versus India, if you wish. In terms of the key drivers, I guess what you're really asking about is what the goals are, right? So what are the key motivators for people to use Fitbit, or what are the key goals for health and wellness? Something that resonates very well in India is weight. Okay, so typically we kind of think that people expect that if you are thin, you are fit, right? Again, it's probably a good correlation to say if you are sort of fit, you may have lesser of the lifestyle diseases, or thin. So weight is one which is there. I guess not surprisingly enough, sleep pattern of people wanting to know how they are sleeping, what kind of sleep stages they are in. That is, we have seen, has also kind of resonated very well with the users to do that, and just being overall fit, being fit kind of a thing. So those are some of the three kind of things that we have seen. Globally, if I were to look at that, and especially if I look at our female audience, in lot many places, as we have seen, women have so many roles, right? Apart from being homemaker, working and all of that. So devices like Fitbit kind of helps them, excuse me, devote enough time or to their own fitness journeys, right? So it's a device which helps you kind of understand better. Have you been able to put that much time around wellness and fitness, in your very busy overall everyday life? A lot of use cases is around people or women after giving childbirth wanting to get back into shape, right? And then again, it's a big journey, as we all know, to lose all the fat that you may have accumulated over the childbirth. How do you get back in shape? So devices like Fitbit help again people on their journey and get back in shape.
So my question is, given that you're a global product, how are you approaching both product design and marketing in particular differently in India as opposed to the rest of the world, given that there are these differences that you just mentioned about Indian consumers versus the world?
So I think in some sense there are many commonalities, as we all know. So when it comes to product design, the products are quite universal. So our focus is to try and give the best sensor package that you can get, right? In a couple of key sort of form factors. One space is the watch space, so that's a certain form factor, and the other space is what you call tracker space, right? So those are the key form factors that we focus on, and we continue to, like I said, evolve with the sensor packages. So every generation will have something more, better. We are adding things like SpO2 sensors which come in there. The heart rate monitors continue to improve. So from a product design aspect, it's far more global. On the other aspect, when you say localization, actually the key thing is all about data. When I talk about localization, like we said, the power of brands such as Fitbit is the fact that we have the world's largest health database, right? We have trillions of hours of sleep data, steps, exercise, right? And then we use that to customize it for that specific person, right? So if you're in India, based on what your sort of eating habits are, based on what your exercise habits are, and a little bit on your genetic sort of makeup, because we know what height, weight, so on and so forth, we are able to mine the data, customize the algorithm for you in that specific country, right? So a person in a different geography or a different sort of health wellness profile will get something totally different from what you and I may get in India. And that is how we localize it, right? So it's not to say, okay, just the communication bit. It's the whole sort of information and data gets localized for you.
So you're basically personalizing to the unique individual rather than worrying so much about, okay, this individual in this country or in that country.
True.
Got it. Thank you so much.
That's a great case study in personalization. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Pleasure.
My next guest is Karan Kumar, Chief Brand and Marketing Officer, Fabindia. With a focus on storytelling to drive conversations, Karan has led several brands to category and industry leadership positions. He's a founding member of the Marketing Society of India. He's been selected twice to present his research papers at the Ecommerce Asia Pacific Conference. Welcome, Karan.
Thank you.
Now, a recent study says that 8 out of 10 millennials find videos to be helpful when they're researching a product or a service. 8 out of 10 millennials. In fact, they're 85% more likely to purchase a product if they've seen a video explaining either the product or what it can do for them. Did you also know that Comscore's report, which is the impact marketing, the marketing impact suite, and we've got data from October 17 to October 18, tells us that millennial women are far more likely to be multi-platform users and use multiple devices than their male counterparts, which means they're probably easier to reach on the internet now than men are. Comscore also tells us that there's a rapid shift to OTT, and that rapid shift is being driven increasingly by women and not by men. And that also means that women are paying for the video that they're watching. I know you've chosen to speak to us about the role of video today. I'm curious where it fits into the brand journey for your customers, especially women, given all of this data. Fabindia does sell online, but a large part of the business and brand is also brick and mortar. There is clearly a customer journey you've identified and a role for video and video on the internet, which drives purchase in some ways. We'd like to understand more of how that happens.
Thanks. That's quite a preamble, and I'll try and do justice to that. So two parts to this question. Let me first try and address the one that you mentioned about the role of video and the role of video in the context of an online versus an offline kind of a journey. Interesting one, but I'll just, if you allow me, I'll just come back to it in a bit, because for me, as I see it, as we see it as a marketing organization, the role of video is not really platform dependent. It's pretty much platform agnostic, and I'll talk to you about why I say that in a bit. But before that, I think, and just to get this entire conversation into context, we're discussing about marketing to millennial women, and we're discussing that specifically in the context of the internet age, as it were. Millennial women, if you were to take the puritanical definitions of who can be called a millennial, would probably be people today who are in the age brackets of the mid-20s to the mid-30s, right, which roughly overlaps with the entire, what was earlier called, or popularly called, Gen Y. There is enough and more data, some data that you mentioned right now from Comscore, there's enough and more data from BCG, from Google, on how India is not just a hugely and rapidly growing internet market. 400 million was the last number that I saw, estimated to grow to close to 900 million in 2022-23. But that aside, the interesting part is that in that rapidly growing market, internet being consumed in the form of OTT in 2023 is going to be close to 625, 630 odd million consumers,
I've seen that data,
right? So imagine a market which has 900 consumers, 900 million consumers, out of which about 600 odd and some change is going to be consuming content in the form of OTT, video content, OTT content. Quite clearly that contextualizes the role and the need for brands to actually wake up to the reality of that kind of messaging and that kind of format of conversations. And video becomes important. Video in the short format, video in the long format. The other reference point is that I believe this generation, the millennial generation, is probably the most hungry, focused, intelligent generation or a sub-audience group that I have seen in the longest time in marketing. And I've been around here for about 16 to 18 years. I think it's a generation which is very clearly conscious about brands which are trying to pull wool over their eyes. And this is a generation which is actually seeking truth. It's seeking authenticity. It's seeking a conversation on real issues. So when you put this entire context of video, internet, and that proliferation, and you put the context of the woman, and why only the woman? I know the context of this session is woman, but if you look at the entire millennial subgroup of audiences, you're putting together potentially a plan where you are attempting to communicate with them in video format. Your content is in video format on issues which are very, very real, on issues which are very, very authentic, on issues which are very, very probing to this particular subgroup.
Give us an example.
So some of the pieces, some trends, if for the want of a better word, that I've noticed about this particular subgroup is their search and association with causes that matter. You know, this is a kind of an audience which is very and more than ever before curiously looking at causes which matter to them, which find a resonance in them, and they look at brands which can espouse, stand for those causes, support those causes, and automatically, if they see the brand making a genuine effort there, they embrace brands more often than the other brands. It's also a generation which is extremely high on what I call social proofing. It's a generation which is not one which takes very keen to broadcast messaging and broadcast advertising as how the marketer has done for the longest time. It's a generation which wants you to put your product out there, get that product evaluated and have feedback on it from their friends, from their families, maybe from influencers, experts in their field, seeking a lot of information on authentic reviews, on authentic feedback on the product, and not necessarily only relying on the advertiser's spiel on what my product can do. It's also a generation which very clearly is always on and is extremely early adopter of what's happening in the technology and the internet space. So it's a generation which wants you to be alive in that socially connected world. It's a generation which wants you to be engaging with them in that ecosystem. They want you to be on top of every new social platform that's emerging. They want you to be on top of every new feature, any new or current platform is coming out with, and how you respond and engage with them on that. If you are going to be speaking to this subgroup of this audience, then I think, and for a moment I'll just keep Fabindia out of this, I think the conversations that you need to have are very story driven and very authentic and true in terms of what they espouse. And at that moment, I will bring Fabindia back into the conversation, because at Fabindia we have one of the most beautiful, heartwarming stories that I think any brand in India for sure has. It's a beautiful story about our products which are derived from, which are inspired by all of India's rich craft, heritage, traditions, and yet these are products which are extremely contemporary, extremely relevant, have a certain intrinsic self-worth in them, and are there for the generation of today to use and to make them become a part of their everyday lifestyles. So how do you connect products which have been crafted by craftsmen, by master weavers across the various nooks and crannies of this country, through remote clusters, often handmade, hand-produced, hand-processed, laboriously, almost every product being a masterpiece in its own self because you can't really replicate it. And to get all of that and to be the perfect bridge between that stakeholder, that very critical stakeholder of the society, with the urban Indian consumer. The stories that you tell of this journey, the stories that you tell about the origins of the various forms of craft that our products represent are extremely heartwarming and extremely relevant stories. And these are stories that go beyond our individual product categories. Because when you look at apparels, when you look at home and lifestyle, when you look at furniture, furnishings, when you look at our personal care products, when you look at our organic food, all of this is derived from traditional craft, art, in some cases traditional wisdom, traditional knowledge. And I think those stories are extremely relevant stories for the millennial for sure, but I think for the larger audience group at large. And the best way of telling those stories is through the video format. If you contextualize that with what I just said when I began speaking to you on this, video format, and you juxtapose that with the internet penetration, you look at that with the kind of high quality of data that we get today at relatively extremely low costs, penetration of high quality mobile devices, at relatively lower costs, looking at how OTT becomes such a potentially humongous platform for you to have conversations with. It's but natural. It's but natural for you as a marketer to put these pieces of the puzzle together and to look at a slightly larger macro view, which says that you need to speak to this audience who speaks truth and who seeks truth and authenticity, who seeks stories, who consumes internet already in the largest format of the story being told in terms of videos, and this segment and this habit of internet consumption is only there to grow, irrespective of any data point that you look at that.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Hi, I just have one question related to the trend is changing and it has changed too, related to online media and offline and social media. So considering your target audience and especially women, what's your feedback and how is it changing? Can you share that point of view, the
When you
online
say
and offline?
trend, you say trend on media, or are you?
It's
are you
more
talking-
of offline and online, how the shopping, the era is moving.
I'm actually glad that you brought that point up, because that's something that Ramit started off by asking, and I said I'll come back to that eventually.
Right.
I did not. This is what I'll say. As part of your core marketing responsibility, one of the things that you're tasked with all the time, 24/7, is to create consumer demand. Create consumer demand, create consumer preference. Yeah, capture that demand and service that demand in as profitable a manner as possible. That is when you capture higher margins. That's why you add more value to the organization. Now, if you go back to the core concept of creating consumer demand, then creating consumer demand, as I see it, will ideally be done most effectively in the context of the audience that we are speaking, through telling stories. Now, those stories create demand, and post demand being created, whether a consumer shops with us or for us, online or offline, that's pretty much irrelevant. We have an extremely large retail footprint, close to 300 stores in this country in more than 100 odd cities. That's an extremely important source of business for us, the retail format, the physical retail format, and yet we also equally passionately drive the online business. So insofar as I'm concerned, how a consumer shops, whether he researches online, buys offline, researches online, places orders online, picks up products at our stores, all of that is secondary to the fact that we need to first create the demand in him or in her, right? And therefore, irrespective of the channel format, I think for me, the method to creating that demand is through storytelling. And storytelling for me best happens in a video format across the platforms that we've discussed.
I have a question. Is there any examples? Let's take apparel as an example, and I can see you're wearing a Fabindia jacket. Is there any examples of feedback that you've got on the internet, for example, or on social media, or as response to the storytelling, which has actually led to creating lines? And I know that at Fabindia you do change your lines available rather quickly. Where is that feedback coming from? Is social, is internet, is all of this storytelling, is the listening process sort of part of it, or
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we have a very, very robust system in place where we are always seeking consumer feedback and information. We call that the customer insight and information management system, where we are bringing in information from social platforms, from our visitor books, through tablets employed at the stores, through which we collect feedback, through store administered questionnaires, which is amongst the largest exercise in this country, done in-house by a brand, through direct mails, through phone calls. So social listening as a tool aside, there is a very large mix of elements at play, which makes us continuously strain our ear to hear more about what our consumers tell us and speak with us. That obviously goes a very, very long way in us making our new product lines, or in us even altering and making corrections in the current product lines. There's feedback that we receive from various age groups, from various town tiers and market classes. And we try and incorporate all of that feedback to make that kind of change, because today, if we are available in more than 100 cities, clearly it's our responsibility to be responsive to consumers in higher tier markets and lower tier markets and in every geography of the country. We take that responsibility fairly seriously. And I think the marketing system that we have, the the consumer information system that we have is something which all of us are extremely proud of.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so that was wonderful, and the two takeaways for me are A, storytelling works, and B, video as a format that in general works and we know is going to be a format for the future, but works for the millennial women audiences, and storytelling on video therefore becomes both an art and a science for Fabindia and for all of us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to invite Rajiv Bansal from HT Media. He's the CEO of our HT Digital Streams, which is really all the digital assets in the Hindustan Times system. We've heard a lot today about creating brands which have a voice and which have a voice that resonate. But we've also heard some parts and some very important parts about building culture internally that resonates externally and is empathetic. I know at HT we are, and in our digital teams, we are trying really, really hard to build a culture that will be more empathetic. Tell us a little more about that.
So, really it's about building consumer-centric organizations. And so, let me start with the bad news. And I think we heard plenty of it amongst all the groups that talked today. Today, when we're talking about millennial women in particular, we don't have enough women in our leadership teams making decisions. We certainly don't have enough millennials in our overall organizations.
Absolutely.
So we are very different from the customers whom we are trying to serve. And then also on top of it, we tend to breathe our own air. So whatever we're building, we fall in love with, and then we blindly go and execute on it without being able to bring the consumer perspective in. So that's the bad news. The good news is this is all fixable, right? So as a CEO, I see my job essentially as one to bring in talent, to make sure talent is successful, and then stays for a long time and contributes to the organization. So I'm not someone who believes in setting specific, I want to hit this diversity goal. I do believe though in opening up our organization in a way that's a process that just brings in all types of talent, right? And as we've done that, we've seen that our organization has gotten younger and it's gotten a lot more diverse with women leaders inside our organization, right? So in that, I would actually disagree a little bit with what Priyanka said, that our organization should exactly be a model of exactly our customer. That's just not possible. There's going to be a journey towards it, and we're going to be servicing all different kinds of customers, and we just can't say, okay, we are going to pick this customer and our organization is exactly going to be that. The second thing is we need to be a lot more data oriented. We talked a little bit about how we are now getting into a situation where we're getting lots and lots of insight from consumers, but it's difficult to break through and make sure the right decisions get taken. I think Pushpanjali was referring to some situations where she as a millennial is bringing this information, and sometimes it can be hard to get through. So we need to become a lot more data oriented. The third thing I'd say is we really need to now bring the consumer in totally into our organization. So we need to do our foundational research, we need to do our ethnographic research, and we need to take all the different functions along when we're doing product design. So we need to take, if you're doing a consumer internet product, you need to take your engineers there. In our case, we need to take our editorial people there, and we need to take our user experience designers there, and we need to take the entire organization. We take our sales team sometimes to our consumer research, and that helps us get a lot of empathy for the consumer across a broader organization. So it's all fixable, but we have work to do.
Great. The cliche says there's no better time to be a woman than now. Frankly, I hope we say this every day for a very long time, and this time actually becomes better. We're probably we've been guilty of lazy stereotyping, perhaps chasing proven formulas for sales that have suddenly become redundant or will be in the future. The what and the how certainly need to evolve in the demographic dividend that's emerging out of a population of young, affluent decision makers who are women and need to be leveraged. It's never been truer for us on the internet as brands. That is already sort of the situation we're dealing with. Today's young women are not people who are ready to settle for less. Today's young woman is confident, influential. She's not ready to be typecasted. She's ambitious, willing to go the extra mile for what she wants. Hopefully, what we've learned from our brand masters today will inspire other marketers and everybody else who's watching this show to unravel many more fascinating sides to the millennial woman and thereby make that an inherent part of their brand journeys. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on episode 6 of Brand Studio Live, co-hosted by HT Brand Studio and DMA Asia. A very special thanks to our friends from DMA Asia and Vatsal Asher for powering this wonderful event. Thank you to Fever, our radio channel, who does a wonderful job every time of covering us. A big round of applause for our 8 brand masters who took out the time to be with us, and for everybody else who made this session so interactive. Thank you to ComScore India for providing a data layer that helped enrich this session, and to Rutu for providing the white paper that actually started off our thinking. Thank you for tuning in. We look forward to coming back with another exciting theme and an all-new set of brand masters. More details coming soon.
And thank you, everyone. You were fantastic.